And it is a great pleasure to be here and privilege. And I heard through the grapevine that I was supposed to speak here. Then I saw my name in bold print in a newspaper. Someone went behind my back and did that. That wasn't supposed to happen here. I really appreciate you all coming so much. And I tell folks I'm pretty good behind a microscope. I'm not as good behind a podium.
It's not on.
It's not? Okay.
I forgot to turn it on.
There we are.
Huh?
Can you all hear a little better now? Hello out there. Great. As I started to think about this talk, and I started to kind of just bring my thoughts together for this time together, I thought, how do I cram a lifetime of experience into about 45 minutes to an hour of discussion and talk? And I like this to be a dialogue too. When I finished my part, and they're videotaping this for some unknown reason, but as we finish that part, I'd like to open this up for your questions and dialogue for me, so you can hear more about what we do in Africa and what is happening over there in that part of the world, because it's a world away from here. It seems strange. I was there just 2 weeks ago with a great team from San Francisco, who I'm going to talk about just now. And we got on an airplane on a Saturday afternoon at about 1 o'clock, and 6 o'clock the next morning we were in America, the other side of the world. And that's how fast you can travel these days from one continent to the other continent. But it's still a world away. And of course, culturally and economically, and just the whole system is very, very different from here. So I want to show you a few pictures about Africa and tell you a little about what we do there. And of course, there's the continent there. So let me try to use this thing to go forward here. There we are. So that's Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe is in southern Africa. And let me kind of give you some idea geographically where it's located. That's South Africa right there, but below it. Nelson Mandela is in very, very severe health now, so he needs our prayers as we go through that time of transition at the end of his life. We have Mozambique here, coming out of about 30 years of civil war. I'll show you some pictures of Mozambique. We have Botswana, which is pretty much the only country for a long time that has been very stable and has had a good democratic government. We have Angola, which was also in 30 years of civil war. Sorry, that's Southwest Africa, excuse me. That's Namibia right there. And that's Angola there. Then you have, excuse me, then you have Zambia here, Malawi, Tanzania, Kenya, Congo, so then you go up the rest of Africa. And between Zimbabwe right here and Cape Town is 1,500 miles. So you're talking about a large continent, okay? Zimbabwe is about the size of Georgia and South Carolina combined, has a population of about 11 million people. About 2 million are now economic and political refugees of other countries because of what's happened in the last 12 years. I'll talk about that just now. So it's a land of contrast. It was settled by the British people back in the 1800s and went through as a British colony. They went through a civil war, guerrilla warfare, which brought a war liberation to the country for the local indigenous people, the African people, which was and a lot of issues with that. I won't go into that, but it has a land of contrast of large cities like this, a modern city. You can see Bulawayo. This is the second largest city of the country where we do all our work. It's a city of 1 million people and has electricity some of the time and water some of the time. But then you can kind of get an idea of some beautiful boulevards. That's a jacaranda tree in the month of October. They bloom at that point in time. But just outside the city, we have primitive African villages. No electricity, no water. So you have a land of contrasts, okay? So you have people who live in a large city. What did I just do? Excuse me. We have people live in a large modern city who have 99% of people who live in the cities who have Western style of education and lifestyle have roots in a village setting. So on holidays such as Christmas time, they'll go back to a village like this to be with their families. Okay, so you have this very large connection culturally between Western and still fairly primitive living, okay, in most people's lives there. But unfortunately, in the last 12 years, because of the economic and political upheavals, people's life has been totally turned around. Zimbabwe dollars. When I arrived in Zimbabwe for 4 years as a medical missionary in 2000, you could take $1 US and buy 10 Zimbabwe dollars, okay, when I arrived. All right, in the last 3 years before they went from their currency to this currency, they are now using American dollars. So you take your American dollars, you buy goods and services with American dollars. From 2005 to 2008, the inflation rate was 10 to the 75th power. So let me give you an example, okay? Here we had 5 Zimbabwe dollars. Where's some money back then? You could buy a loaf of bread back then for $5. To $20. To $50. I'm a rich man, aren't I? $100. $500. $1,000. $20,000. $50,000. $200,000. This is a course of 6 years, folks. $500,000. I lost a few denominations. $10 million. Sorry, $10 billion. $10 billion. $20 billion. $25 billion. $50 billion. $100 billion. $100 trillion. And in 2008, I was talking to a nurse at the hospital when I came over there in 2008. She says, "Oh, Dr. Bay, when they came out with this $100 trillion notes, we thought our problems were ended because now we have money." 2 weeks later, after this came out, you couldn't buy a loaf of bread with us. So it's a lesson to us in our economy and spend, spend, spend. Because that's what this government did, is printed money. That's all it did. And it became worthless, you see, until they went to dollarization in 2008. So the folks back in that country at the end of 2008 lost almost everything. The healthcare system went straight down. Now we have US dollars. People who have cell phones, they have food, they have clothes, but still the healthcare system, education are lagging far behind. That's our biggest need we have there, politically and economically and stability-wise. There's an example right there, okay? Interesting, isn't it? All right, I'm going to show you a couple of things here. I'm not there for politic reasons. I'm not there for anything else but to help folks. That's why I go. It's my passion. I'm just a little eye doctor, okay? But God gave me a talent. And I can use this talent to bring eyesight to people. And tell you what, those of you who had cataract surgery in this room or other surgeries on the eyes, it's kind of nice to see better again, isn't it? Yeah. Can you imagine some unsophisticated villager who's blind, who has no hope, and we come and we do surgery on them? What impact upon their lives it has? I have some great stories to tell you about that. But here's a picture of some eye cams I'm doing there. And here I am with a patient in the operating room. I'm not going to get too detailed, but there are some folks in medicine here, so I'm going to talk a little medicine occasionally. And for those of you who are not, please just close your eyes when it comes to the gory pictures. But here's a young person here who has a disease called keratoconus. And keratoconus is a disease quite common in Africans in which the cornea starts to become, we use the word ectatic or thinned, and it starts to bulge outwards. So you slowly lose your eyesight. Now you can start using contact lenses and glasses at first, but eventually you cannot use those because your vision's so poor you cannot function. You can see things, but it's a total blur. And the cure, total cure, is a corneal transplant. So here I am doing a corneal transplant in Africa. So in America, I take I go to the Georgia Eye Bank in Atlanta, Georgia. Yeah, it is in Georgia. Atlanta is in Georgia, that's right. I just came from surgery, folks. And the eye bank has given me human eyes that people have donated. You know, on your license, you have that little small spot that you can donate your organs. So here I take these cornea, these human eyes, in a little styrofoam box to the Atlanta airport with red tape over it. It says, "Caution, human body parts, human eyes." It says that, okay? So I get to the Atlanta airport, and they say, "What's in the box?" And so, of course, I look like a terrorist, so they take me to a back room to open the box up to be sure it's not a bomb or something like that. And they see human eyes in little small containers of culture medium to keep them preserved. All right, so I get to Johannesburg. So I get on the airplane to go to Johannesburg, and now the stewardess, I pulled her aside and said, "Listen, ma'am, I've got a little problem. I've got this box with human eyes to take to Africa to do transplants. Could you find some place in your refrigerator where you store your food for us passengers to let them cool down?" And after a few looks and discussions, many times they'll take care of it for us. Get to Johannesburg Airport, and now I have to explain to them, you know, the total procedure of what I'm doing to restore eyesight. I get to Zimbabwe, I'm trading body parts. I must be a witch doctor. Here's a little girl. She was 9 years old. Her dad appealed to the newspaper to raise a couple of $100 million for a corneal transplant. And they couldn't afford it, of course. And they heard about me, and so this is one of the transplants I did with this little 9-year-old girl about 6 years ago, and she's still doing well. Here I am in a hospital. My ministry there in Africa is 3 or 4 pronged. It was 3 pronged. It's expanded some the last year and a half, but it was in teaching other doctors and nurses, trying to empower them, give them skills. And then I was also going out with church groups and other groups to villages in the rural areas, taking used eyeglasses you all give us, because they can never afford a pair of eyeglasses. And so we take these eyeglasses with us and medications, and we go to villages and do eye camps in rural areas, rural villages. We did one just 2 weeks ago with Karen Johnson in the back of the room there and some other folks with us. And those who need surgery in those village eye camps that I identify, will take them to a district hospital. And that's the last part, and I do consulting and do surgery. Well, this is a government hospital in a remote area called Binga, northwest part of the country, a very hot place. That room right there is about 95 degrees, and sweat's raining down on my gloves. And here's this patient who's a poor villager from the Tonga tribe. I'll tell you about them in a little while. And this patient is probably the most cleanest place I've ever been to, is this hospital. So I'm there sitting there doing surgery, and this is probably the 5th or 6th case of about 20, 25 cases I'll do sometimes in a day. It was strange. One day I was in there and doing the surgery, and I'm looking through the microscope, and you can imagine I could see the patient's eyes through the microscope magnified for me. But my peripheral vision, I can still see light and other things out that part of my vision. And I saw a movement with my peripheral vision. I looked up, and there was a bank of windows at the hospital room there, and I just couldn't believe it. Looking inside at me, watching surgery, was a big baboon. And I had a reality check. This is not St. Francis Hospital. I'm in Africa doing eye surgery. And I guess the baboon's trying to get some techniques for me. I don't know. And here's the first morning after surgery. They're lined up for me. And this nurse here, by the way, this nurse was quite interesting, because I asked her, and she's probably had a 6th grade education. And she was speaking one language to this patient, another language to that patient. And so I asked her, I said, how many languages do you know? She started counting. She was 13. You know, we Americans, you've heard the term trilingual. You know, trilingual means you can speak 3 languages. Bilingual, you can speak 2 languages. Well, Americans are just unilingual. They can't speak 1 language, most Americans. So we have a job to do, and that's to learn other people's cultures. And when you learn the culture, you learn their language too. Because to get to their heart, you've got to know the language. Thank God I've been able to learn their language most of the time and get by. And sometimes I make them laugh as well. Now, here's the first few patients. I'm pulling the eye patches off the first day post-op. Here's the little lady looking up. And as we pull them off and they can start to see again, these are blind villagers. They start to get up and start singing and dancing because they're so amazed by it. And you know, it was interesting. One day I was doing an eye camp, and I was about the 4th patient, a little lady, and the African nurse who was assisting me, he says, "You see this lady, Dr. Beaty?" I said, "Yes, what about her?" He said, "This lady has been blind for 27 years. I said, 27 years? How'd that happen? She says, "Well, she comes from a very, very remote village, and we didn't get to her until this time to screen her and see that she couldn't see at all. We brought her to have her eye operation." I said, "Well, find out about this lady for me." So later that day, I asked him about this lady, and he says, "Well, she's never seen 17 or 20 grandkids. She has, her grandchildren would take her into the bush to use the toilet, and it was very demeaning and very embarrassing for her because she couldn't see to go anywhere. They would steal food out of her plate because people were starving at that point in time in this history of this country." I said to myself, what's going to happen to this lady when tomorrow morning we take her patch off? So the next day I watched as we came down the line, I pulled the patch off, and she started talking in a language I didn't know. It was Nambian. And so I asked the nurse, I said, "What is she saying?" And she started singing and dancing. And well, I ask you this question. If you were blind for 27 years, what would you say? I can see the world, can't I? The trees. Everything's beautiful now, isn't it? Well, she said these words. She says, "Now I can see, I can go back to the village and find those people who owe me money so I can get it now." So that's a different culture. I guess she wanted some more money, I guess. But that was the most she could get out of her own soul and her own mind, I've had patients say, I'm going home to kill a chicken now, because that was the best they had, you see, in a village area. Here's an old man who's, my friend one time, he says, Dr. Beaty, you made the wrong diagnosis. You missed the foreign body in the nose. And you see the cataract right there. You see that white thing in the eye? Okay, this gentleman had a scar in his other eye. He was blind in both eyes. He had a 21-year-old pregnant wife. So that we fixed his cataract. He'd never seen her clearly, of course. And after the operation was over, he could see again. He walked outside and saw all these women lined up, and he went down the line and said, Are you my wife? Are you my wife? And finally found his wife. And I hope she looked good to him. I don't know. We'll see. Here's a young man. This is a terrible thing, because this is a young man. He's probably 21. I don't think he's alive anymore, because this young man has HIV. 1/3 of the population has HIV. And I want to tell you, back in those years between 2000 and 2008, the life expectancy in Zimbabwe fell to for men, average age of 34. Women, average age of 32. Okay, the lowest in the world. And I think the only nation that lifespan reversed, where women didn't live as long as men. Combination of HIV, economic hardship, starvation, malaria, oppression, things like that. So, again, I say these things because our hearts want to reach out to these folks, but also, thank God, He put you where you are, and for the blessings you have, and for all that you have that, sometimes we take for granted, don't we? And this young man has what we call a squamous cell carcinoma of the eye right here. Now, you take this off of the operation and freeze that area to stop that happening, because if you don't, that's what happens. This guy came to me last year in a remote village clinic. And I was sitting in a school room when I took that picture, a school where we did an eye camp. And it was about 100 miles from the city, okay? And that requires a major operation. He probably didn't make the rest of that year, okay? All right, here's folks waiting for the eye doctor in a village eye camp. And when you all go to the doctor, the best thing about going to the doctor probably is you've got a problem and you're really hoping that he or she will help you solve your medical problem, provide relief for pain or other things. Isn't that right? It's about the best thing. And the worst thing is probably the bill. Is that right? Is that the worst thing? What's the worst thing about going to the doctor?
Wait.
I told you about culture, folks, okay? Because that's exactly right. Everyone I ask in this country says wait. Let me give you some little advice, okay? Here are these folks here. They've been waiting most of the day to see me, okay? All right, from a village. And, I would be seeing these patients, long lines of patients. Here they are waiting in the line here, okay? This is another eye camp. Long lines. And I'd be seeing patients one after the other. And my record is 585 patients in 2 days I saw, okay? That's my record, okay? I was wiped out. So I'd be seeing 2 or 3 hours, and I'd go outside, peek out the door to see how many more are left, Long line of patients. I get pretty uptight about this, I've got to see these patients because they're waiting for me. And this, one of my African friends said, Dr. Beaty, I see you're concerned and stressed about these people waiting. Do not worry. Waiting is not bad. Waiting is not good. Waiting is just waiting. Okay, so next time you come to my office, I've given you some advice, okay? So here they are waiting at a rural eye camp, and here's a little pamphlet I wrote about physical and spiritual eyesight. And I won't tell you the inability to, but it talks about eyesight for these folks as they wait. Here's my son in the sophisticated Africa branch of the West Georgia Eye Care Center up there. And here's a young older gentleman, just like you have your eyes tested. He's outside having his eyesight tested. And there's a little building there, one of the eye camps I did. It's about a 8x8 room in there with an asbestos roof. So when I said turn the lights on, I meant open the door. When I said turn the lights off, I meant close the door. Here I am inside looking at this little Tonga lady from the Tonga tribe. And if you notice closely, she has a little reed in her nose there. If you look closer, her front 4 teeth are knocked out. You know why that is? Let me tell you ladies, okay? Now you ladies, this is something special you get when you get married in Africa, okay? You get married in Africa in this tribe, your husband takes a hoe and knocks your front 4 teeth out to show you his, okay? So, any volunteers for this tribe? But she's about 4'6". She's very, very small. River people, very, very primitive. She has charms on her wrists and her neck to ward off evil spirits. Lives in darkness. I look at her and I say, God help us. Excuse me. Because I examined her, and I can tell she's nearsighted because that series of lenses I have in her eye there. And so we ought to take her down and give her a pair of glasses, and she could see again. And so she was singing, dancing, rejoicing. Someone here gave us a pair of glasses. We took them over there, very remote eye camp, and we were to help her out. In fact, it was a team from Columbus, Georgia, here who went with us and helped us in this eye camp there. Here I am in an eye camp. That's my other branch office there. Every time I came out the door, I knocked my head there. Excuse me, these next two pictures, I'm sorry, I didn't turn out well. Here's a very close picture of eye surgery. Sorry for you, those who don't like eye surgery. Doing a cataract operation. And notice there's just a little small cloth drape there. We put Beaty on the eye, do the operation. I was there at eye camp last year with these two other doctors. We did 50 cases in 4 hours. So we were going fast because we had 100 operations to do. Here's a woman's ward afterwards. And here's a man right here with his patch on his eye, afterwards waiting for the next morning. This is at a small district hospital in southern Zimbabwe we went to. Here's my daughter. We did an eye camp. Here she is fitting a pair of glasses on a lady's eye. And I show these pictures to, once again, show you how much you mobilize us to help us in these things we do. So it's kind of a team effort, isn't it? You know, I go, but you mobilize. And here's my other daughter putting a pair of glasses on a lady. And of course you can see the joy on her face. And she gets her glasses. Yeah. One little kid reminds me very, very poignantly as I think about this. She was, her mother brought her to see us. It was the year before last. And a 9-year-old girl. And she had a pair of glasses already. But she was squinty, she couldn't see well. And so I measured the glasses. She was -9 in her glasses. I measured her eye, she was -16. The night before, we were been measuring glasses and sorting them out. We came across a little small pair of glasses for a kid and measured them and put them aside. And next day, when we saw this little girl, pulled them out. And guess what? Those glasses were -16.25, both eyes. Isn't that amazing? Yeah. God works in mysterious ways, doesn't he? All right, here I am. This is another eye camp. We actually were asked by a group to go to Mozambique. Now, Mozambique was to Zimbabwe as Zimbabwe is to the United States, so that's how much poorer Mozambique is. And so we went to the coast, flew the coast, my wife and I and a couple of folks, and met some locals and also some Zimbabweans who had traveled across, who had taken my glasses and my medicines and smuggled across the border, as we always have to do. And they had identified some villages along the coast here. This is along the estuary here. These people didn't know we were coming, okay? Had never seen us before in their lives. And so we were taking boats over to this village. And as we're driving there, I said, well, who's going to be the interpreter for these people? I don't know the language. You don't either. And so my friend Warren says, well, I guess we'll have to trust God. We don't have an interpreter. I said, oh, my goodness. So we pull up to the beach here. And they don't know we're coming, okay? This is an afternoon. You're with me, okay? We're in the same boat. And I'm thinking, are they going to pull out spears and guns and knives and come and, ex-Dr. Beaty, So we pull up the beach, and my friend Warren jumps out, and TK Kamala here, and Chris, my other friend here. And so we jumped out, and they, of course, came out of their huts to see us. And by the way, these villagers, all they do their whole life is they fish in little small dugout canoes. They put fishing line on their toes, 4 or 5 hooks. When the fish bites, they feel it tug against their toe and catch a fish, okay? Eat the fish, dry them, and once a week, every 2 weeks, they go to a common area to then try to sell fish. That's all they do their whole life, okay? No education. There may be 1 or 2 that have gone to school somewhere. But anyway, here they are. They come out, and so Warren says, anybody here know any English? I'm thinking, boy, there may be someone who knows something. And this one man he came up and says, I know a little English. His name was Lucky. Yeah, your name's Change of Providence. So he said, we have an eye doctor. We're from Zimbabwe. We have an eye doctor from America who has eyeglasses and medicines. Would you like us to come and check your eyes and give you some glasses and help you? Oh, yeah, that'd be fine. So we said, do we have a place the doctor can put his stuff and examine patients? Oh, yes, we have a place for him. And here's my place right there. Okay? And so by a little reed hut there in the middle of the swamp, And so here's a little man named Antonio, because they're all Portuguese colony folks. They know the Portuguese, but they didn't know English. And as I was examining these patients, my friend Chris Lamalo from Zimbabwe listened to them talk. And he said, I can understand their dialect. It's pretty similar to one of the dialects I know. So now we were able to communicate with these people, which is wonderful, of course. It's kind of important to let these speak what they speak. Here's my wife, Jane, with the eyeglasses and her sophisticated optical shop right there. And so we examined patients 3 or 4 hours and had just an incredible time. That was, I'm going to go back, sorry guys. Go back. There you are. That was one of the eye camps we did in Mozambique. Spent several days there, and it's amazing. Of course, we want to go back. The problem is Africa is so vast and there's so much need. The need is so great. So you have to say, okay, where are we going to prioritize our needs? And this next picture shows starving little kids. And I want to show you this picture, the need we had there with a feeding project we had with a school of 400 orphans that were in Zimbabwe. Orphans are just, there's about 200,000 orphans in Zimbabwe, and they are in dire shape because of the HIV epidemic. But that's a ministry we also do over there. But going back to this, trying to find ways to prioritize what we can do and the needs that are there. We've started up a wonderful project at St. Francis Hospital. A year and a half ago, we came together with an executive retreat, and we thought, you know, St. Francis Hospital is doing a lot for the community. What if we were to look further in the community? What would the ethos of the hospital be like? How would it change if we looked internationally? And so we came together and brainstormed this and came up with a project to join up with a Catholic hospital in Bulawayo, the modern-day hospital, in a skills exchange program and cultural exchange. And so this was moved along, went through the boards of both hospitals, and both boards approved it, and has now even moved along. We had our first trip last month of doctors that went. And our objectives were, firstly, to identify the needs of this particular hospital and explore ways to help us assist them in those needs. Secondly, we try to form relationships and friendships with the leadership there and the doctors there. And then thirdly, just to come up with goals and ways we can go forward to bring assistance and empower them. It's one thing for me to go up and do eye surgery. It's another thing if I can go over and train someone, isn't it? If I train someone, I start a legacy, you see. And that's what our objective is now, doing more and more of this type of ministry and outreach, because as you do that, you can change the whole healthcare system of a whole country. And that's the problem with this country. It needs to be resurrected again. So this team here, here's Dr. Butch Wolf. Some of y'all may know some of these guys. He's a general surgeon and a trauma surgeon, also a wound care specialist. He's now talking to a general surgeon there, a local man. This is the first day that we were there. Dr. Lee McCluskey, orthopedic surgeon with a foot fellowship, fine surgeon, and an orthopedic surgeon, local gentleman there. They were right there just talking the first day and planning the week that we had together. And then there's, here I am in the background. This is Maureen Jameson, who's the actual hospital administrator of the Modern Day Hospital. Modern Day Hospital is a Catholic hospital with very similar roots to St. Francis Hospital. Started in the 1950s by Franciscan Catholic nuns from Ireland. And then as time went by, it transitioned and the hospital was put in a trust. And then a local board made of community leaders now leads the hospital. Very similar to St. Francis Hospital. One big exception. That's the economic and political turmoil. Because the last 12 years, the healthcare system has fallen flat. The government took over 6,000 farms, the agricultural sector fell flat. So now the hospital has very difficult problems with costs and patients who are trying to capture patients who need care, who have the resources to help fund the hospital. So that's one of the projects we have to go alongside with these guys and try to help encourage them using the models we have in the States here. And here's Dr. McCluskey talking to another orthopedic surgeon, Dr. Macheka, who was leader of the group over there in this relationship. And they had set up a trauma course for us. Here's Dr. McCluskey's wife with a little child in the pediatric ward there. And so St. Anne's School came on board, and they sent cards to the little children in the wards and these little rosaries. And more importantly, those little small dum-dums that you get here. I think the nurses ate the dum-dums. But just a wonderful interaction that we had over the course of 2 weeks that we were there last week of May and the first week of this year. Here's a trauma course that they had set up for 3 days. I think about 50 doctors attended this trauma course from all over the southern part of the country. And that's Dr. Wolf actually dialoguing with some of the doctors there on some of the subjects that we talked about. And here's another picture of them there. And here's yours truly talking about eye trauma. Mine was the last lecture, so I was trying to keep them awake by then, you see. It was, what happens, you lecture 3 days. I mean, the third day, you better be preaching to them rather than lecturing. Otherwise, they're going to fall asleep. And I was after lunch, too. That was even worse. So, terrible. I kept them awake, don't worry. So here's this Karen Wolf, trauma nurse, and she actually headed up a series of probably 10 or 12 lectures she gave to the nursing staff. The nursing programs there need a lot of resurrection and care. She told me, I didn't know this, that on the wards, nurses don't even have stethoscopes in the wards. That's how tough things have gotten over there. Here she is sorting out some of the stuff we took over. We took some uniforms and clothes there. And then we also did something special, which has happened in St. Francis. How long has this award been given out at St. Francis, Karen?
Oh, gosh, it's probably been 4 or 5 years, I'd say.
4 or 5 years, this award. This is the Daisy Award, which is awarded to the, awards excellence in nursing care. And what they do is, I'm sure you know more than I do, because I'm not a nurse, but here she is, excuse me, let me go forward a little bit more. She's actually teaching nurses here. This is the doctors making rounds in the ICU here with the doctors there. And then here's the award here. And it awards an outstanding nurse who they choose. And here I think it's every quarter or every month.
I do every quarter.
Every quarter here in America.
We don't every month.
Okay. Every quarter the nurses come together collectively and choose an outstanding nurse. And it recognizes excellence in nursing. When you are recognized, it stimulates you to want to be more excellent in your care, and you feel rewarded and you feel fulfilled in what you're doing, you see. And so this award we decided to take across with us, and this is the first time this award has been given in the continent of Africa. It's been given in America, it's been given in Europe, is that correct? But in the continent of Africa. So it was a very big deal. It was given at a luncheon we had, and here are the 7 finalists, the hospital, and I think this young lady is the one who won it. So it generated a lot of enthusiasm with this whole thing here. Okay, so I'll ask about questions later about that. How much time do I have here? Another 3 hours, is that right? Now I got patients at 2:30, don't I? Who's in here who has an appointment at 2:30 in my office? Yeah, there she is. I'll be there at 3:30, okay? These are my 2 daughters and her friend. I went over there for 4 years. I'm not sure if you know that. Spent from 2000 to 2004 doing medical missions in Zimbabwe. We arrived there from America. My oldest kid was, Rebecca was 13, Rachel was 11. This is Michelle, her friend, in her class. They went from American schools, no uniforms, to uniforms, and speaking English, but not English in our accent or some other languages in the classroom. So you can imagine the culture shock they had. In fact, the first morning they came back from school, when we first arrived in Zimbabwe in 2000, 2 of the 3 kids were crying. And my wife and I looked at each other and said, wow, this is tough. Wow, I don't have a return ticket on this one. So we encouraged them, and next morning got up, went by the girls' room and said, girls, get up, get your uniforms on, and go back to get ready for school. I went by my son's room. He was 8 years old at the time. And I said, Russell, get up and get your uniform when it's time to go to school. He looked at me and said, I'm not going to school. So I thought and prayed. And I said to myself, this is a job for his mother. So I went inside the kitchen and I said, Jane, Russell, I went by Russell's room to tell him time for school. He said, I'm not going to school. She says, what? And I said, yeah, he said he won't go. He says, we'll see about that. So she walked back and he says, young man, get out of bed now and get dressed. And he shot out of bed like a rocket, Because, if Dad says you can't do something, go to Mama. If Mama says you're in trouble, But anyway, after 4 years, they didn't want to leave that country. And this girl here is a PA, and she's now doing a residency second-year residency in pharmacy, graduate work at Texas Children's Hospital, just moved there. So it shows you that when you feel called to do something, do it. your kids will be okay, or your family. You think, well, I want to do this and that, but my family, I can't let them leave Columbus, Georgia, and leave the safety of what they. God will take care of all that stuff. He will. What's that bush behind these girls, guys? Come on. That's correct. Very good. What are those? Bougainvillea. This town, sunbeam blooms all year round in this part of the world. Okay. So here's a sunset over the Metopus Hills. And I'm going to show you some pictures of some of the wildlife there. Giraffe. Here they are at a waterhole drinking. And there's a leopard at the late afternoon waiting for the night to fall to look for his kill. And of course there's a Mr. Crocodile waiting for some animal to come close by. And here's a beautiful sunset in the background with some vultures in the tree right there. Here's a lion at a kill. Last year, the drought was so bad that the elephants were not as strong as they were, and there's a lot of the plains game had left, so the lions were killing elephants for food. The young ones, of course, okay? And actually, BBC had come to this very area and done a documentary on this as well. And here's, there's another sunset picture of Zimbabwe. Here's Mr. Elephant there has been down a hole digging the mud and salt there. And here I am sitting at a pool, foolishly watching this big bull elephant come and drink out of the pool with my nephew from Australia. But I ran away quickly. Here's the mighty Victoria Falls, and this is an amazing sight. And we were there about 3 weeks ago, tomorrow in fact, and it's a mile across and 300 feet deep. And one of the folks in this room, his son, jumped off a bridge, bungee jumping off this bridge when we were there. Kim Gerald's son did that. Yeah, did she take after you, Kim? Here it is, beautiful, beautiful sight. As David Livingston, who discovered this falls, he looked over the edge and his first words was, "Angels must have paused in flight as they saw this wonder." That's the main falls there. All right, here's a sundown picture of Zimbabwe as we kind of wrap things down for my part of the talk, but I want to open up the time for some questions or some comments that you have for me, and let's just discuss a few things and burning questions in your heart about what we do and what's happening and what's next.
What is next?
Well, I'm taking another team. This year I've pretty much committed taking several teams short trips from St. Francis Hospital, and those to go and help and teach and encourage doctors and nursing staff and the healthcare system there. So our last team consisted of an orthopedic surgeon, general surgeon, a trauma nurse, myself, my wife is a physical therapist, and Karen Johnson from the administration of the hospital, and a medical student with us. Next team, we have a neonatal ICU nurse going. We have an informational technology, a computer person going to help them with computers. And I actually have an agricultural man and a few other folks going to do some other stuff on the side, the next trip. The trip in October is not fully finalized yet. We have a plastic surgeon who wants to go, and any other volunteers? That's for this year. And so we're really trying to move forward in this sister relationship and really trying to help them in that vein. There's a medical school in the city of Bulawayo. It's had its first class in second year, and so that's a big part of what we want to try to encourage and bring education to them as well. So it's really, we started off with this one hospital. We quickly realized when we were there that we needed to look at not just this one hospital, but the whole healthcare system in that area. Bulawayo is a city of 1 million people, and the drawing area is 4 million people. It's the only good hospital south of the capital, 5 hours away. So they have a lot of issues and a lot of needs.